It's a very exciting day today, guys. Inside this passion fruit teepee is a wine cap mushroom bed that I built off camera from that previous video. I actually built 2 other beds in my gardens. I figured this was a good spot because it's nice and dark all the time from the passion fruit vines. And today's the day. It's actually fruiting. I think this heat wave that we're experiencing after a period of cold triggered the fruiting cycle. So let's go inside and take a look. Welcome back to Jacques in the Garden. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, a little more freeform. This is more of a vlog style video, and I decided to record this for you guys so I could show you how to harvest, cook, and refresh a wine cap mushroom bed. And I just want to mention this mushroom spawn came from Field and Forest Products, so I'll put a link in the description for that spawn if you're interested. If you don't have anywhere outside to grow something like a wine cap mushroom bed though, I'll also include a link to some countertop mushroom kits that we sell on the Epic Gardening store. All right, so here's the entrance to the teepee. Let's pop inside and see what it looks like. You can see I have a GoPro. It's gonna get some time-lapse, some nice time-lapse footage. But man, look at those. So these are the red wine caps. You could see they've been chewed on a little bit. Sometimes the detritivores, like the roly-polies, will take a bite. Doesn't matter, it's still good eating. I could tell you one thing, I'm definitely gonna be eating it. And then here's another one. And you could see right here, all this white stuff is the mycelium thread. So that's kind of the actual main organism of the mushroom itself. And then these mushrooms you could think of as like their fruit. So from here, they will release their spawn, which is like a little powder, and that's how they propagate. These are actually the fruiting bodies. We have one patch here coming up, one patch there. I see another one poking up right there. And then the straw is lifted over here. So we have at least 4 different sites where this is fruiting right now. So these will probably be ready today, especially with how hot it is. I'm gonna go ahead and spray this with a little bit of water to make sure that it doesn't dry out, and then so that the mushrooms themselves don't dry out. So here I am inside the wine cap mushroom bed, and there's actually a couple different sites that are fruiting right now. Now earlier, actually yesterday, I noticed this fruiting, but I only saw like 2 or 3 mushrooms. And I picked one that was just perfectly ready, and that's this guy right here. So a couple things I'll talk about is, first off, you can see there's a couple little chew marks and maybe some pits and holes. That tends to happen as it comes through the straw or hits a stick. It'll sometimes pierce it. And then things like roly-polies or earwigs will actually come in and start munching on this. So let's talk a little bit about identifying these mushrooms and why these are such a good mushroom to grow at home. And that's because they're so easy to identify. There's nothing else really that looks like it once you cross off a couple little checklist items. Let's go ahead and grab this guy over here, and I'll show you guys what you want to look out for. Let me show you the difference of what I'm talking about. So right here, you can see this part of the mushroom. That's the skirt of the mushroom. So that's a very unique identifying feature to these. If it has this kind of appearance and then it has these gills down here that once you touch, they'll actually stain your finger a purplish color. That's the wine cap part of the name. So you have the skirt, the wine coloration on your fingers, and that the fact that they look like this, that's a pretty strong, like actually 99.9% conclusive ID. This is a wine cap mushroom. The reason why I said this one's tricky is because it looks like it was still opening, and the actual skirt itself got stuck to the outer cap. But I know this is a wine cap mushroom. I'm gonna rub my thumb against this piece. And yeah, it's actually coloring my thumb. So that's a great indication. A couple different things to mention. There's different stages you could harvest this at. This is probably the biggest I'd harvest it at. You could go a little bit more and treat it like a portobello mushroom. You can grill that straight up on the grill hole. But a lot of people like to harvest them in their bun stage, which is more similar to like this, where they haven't fully opened. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab this guy. And you'll notice I'm coming in with a knife. That's not necessary. You can just kind of rip them out. But if you come in with a knife, you have less chance to damage the mycelium network underneath. So that'll ensure that we're not actually damaging the mushroom colony that lives underneath the straw, and will ensure that we have a longer harvest. So I'm gonna just harvest these 3 for now. I'll let the rest of these keep growing. Maybe we'll get a nice time lapse. Let's now talk about how do you actually keep your wine cap mushroom bed producing for a very long time. And the way you do that is actually by feeding them. So the mushrooms are actually physically eating the material that we're growing them in. So this straw maybe was up to here at some point. They've now consumed it down because they're breaking down that carbon to get the nutrients that they need to produce these fruiting bodies. So if I were to just harvest these out and leave it, maybe I'll get one more flush. but they've already chewed through so much of it that they'll probably run out and then they'll just stop. But we can actually refresh it by feeding them more. And in this case, I'm gonna go ahead and top it with some garden straw. The reason I'm using the garden straw is actually multifold. One of the primary reasons I'm reaching for this rather than a straw bale is the fact that it's so clean. There's not going to be any pre-existing like fungus or other mushroom spores on this. I've had trouble in the past using regular straw bales because they tend to sit outside for such a long time that they get dirty and they start getting colonized by other mushrooms. Like those inky cap mushrooms tend to really like straw. And so when I built a previous bed using a straw bale, I had a ton of random mushrooms spawning in there that really wasn't great. But whenever I use this, which is what you see here, the garden straw, I actually have much better success because it's so clean that there's no chance it's going to be really bringing any other fungus with it. And the final step, what we're going to do here today, is we're going to come in and water this very deeply so that all the straw gets nice and saturated. And also as the mushrooms grow, if you catch them in their growing stage and then water them, they will grow faster and they'll probably grow better. So if you do notice them coming up, it's a good time to also water your mushroom bed. All right, so we're gonna let that run for about 20 minutes. And while that's running, let's go cook up some mushrooms. Now that we've harvested our wine cap mushrooms, let's go over a simple recipe to cook these and see how they taste. I'm actually gonna go ahead and remove the stem, especially now that it's been old. It's just a little too woody for me to wanna eat right now. But I also wanted to quickly share with you guys how I store mushrooms. Whenever I collect mushrooms, what I do now is I get a paper bag and inside I'll put some paper towel, just like this. Put the mushrooms inside the paper towel, sort of ball it up to cover them, place it back in there, close your bag up and store it in the fridge. And by doing that, you could actually make your mushrooms last up to a week. If you put them in a crisper drawer, it apparently lasts even longer. So we're gonna keep this pretty simple so we could let the mushroom actually shine and get all that delicious flavor. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna split this mushroom in half and then I'm gonna come across and slice it into slices. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. You can see how actually pretty the mushrooms are on the inside. They still have some of that red wine kind of color to it. This one's a little bit old, a little bit more wrinkly. I think I just sat in the sun more than the other ones because you could see it's a little bit more tan, but it should still be good. For the scapes, all we're gonna do is cut them into little slices. It doesn't matter if they're perfect. You could eat the whole entire part, including the little flower head. I'm just gonna go ahead and do a very rough chop here. If you don't have scapes, which obviously most of the time you don't, you could just throw in a couple cloves of garlic. So now we're all prepped up, let's move over to the pan on the grill. Like I said, we're gonna keep this extremely simple. All I have here is a cast iron pan starting to heat up. Now there are a couple different options. You could dry saute mushrooms and it's supposed to concentrate the flavor more. I don't really find that to be very true or any better. So I'm gonna use a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of butter also works great for something like this. Now I'm gonna just add in the mushrooms. I'm gonna mix it a little, make sure the olive oil gets on every one of the mushrooms. And then we're gonna sprinkle a little bit of salt and just let them sit so they could caramelize and get some color. Now we'll check back in a few minutes and see how they caramelize. Starting to get some good browning here. So I'm actually gonna come back in and add the rest of the garlic scapes. I'm also gonna give it a stir now. You can really see how well these kind of mushrooms caramelize. Like, they just really pick up this beautiful brown color. And it already smells incredible. I can tell you right now that I'm very excited to eat these. And it's probably gonna be, I don't know, maybe 2 more minutes. With mushrooms, you have a lot of options on how you wanna cook it. If you cook them a little on the drier side, they get more into almost like a bacon territory where it's a very intense flavor in a small bite. If you leave them a little more on the sort of juicy side, you get more of that, there's more of like a balanced flavor to the mushroom. I like them both ways, but I think I prefer them a little crispy, but I highly recommend that you try it both ways. At this point, I'd say we're actually done. Everything looks fully cooked. There's a little bit of caramelization around all parts of the mushroom, and the scapes have a little bit of browning on them. So I'm gonna go ahead, turn this off, and plate up, and we'll do a little taste test. So I've never done a taste test video before, so all I'm gonna do here is try it and try to describe what I think the flavor is like. So let's grab a couple mushrooms, grab a couple scapes, and go in. There's really no other mushroom like this that I've personally ever had, and nothing out of the garden that tastes quite as delicious as this. I will still take this over any regular old mushroom from the grocery store any day of the week. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you learned a little bit about red wine cap mushrooms, how to grow them, how to keep growing them, and how to eat and enjoy them. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.